Tonight, we dive into a world few have seen, a place where shadows gather beneath the gleam of gold and marble. The Vatican stands as a symbol of faith and power, but beneath its sacred halls lie secrets darker than any scripture. For centuries, this fortress of belief has hidden relics not meant for the light of day. Objects that whisper of forgotten rituals, forbidden knowledge, and stories erased from the pages of history. This isn't just about ancient texts or lost treasures. It's about the eerie and unexplained, items locked away in vaults where the curious dare not tread. From mysterious manuscripts to relics bound in gold chains, from masks of torturers to artifacts that defy explanation, these 20 chilling secrets reveal a Vatican few know exists. So before you turn away, ask yourself, what else is hidden beneath the surface? What truths does the Church guard behind iron doors and silence? Like the video, subscribe, because tonight we uncover the 20 creepiest things hidden in the Vatican, and some secrets were never meant to be revealed. Imagine a city so small you could walk across it in less than an hour, yet so powerful that kings, presidents, and entire nations bow to its influence. At its heart stands a grand basilica, crowned with a dome that seems to touch the sky, sunlight gleaming off marble steps worn smooth by centuries of pilgrims. This is Vatican City, the spiritual capital for over 1 billion Catholics worldwide. But beneath the awe-inspiring beauty and sacred ceremonies lies a truth far more complex. The Vatican is not only a place of worship. It is a fortress of faith, yes, but also of secrets, and some of those secrets are older, darker, and stranger than anything told in Sunday sermons. From the outside, it appears open to all. Tourists flood St. Peter's Square every day, craning their necks to take photos of the majestic colonnades. Pilgrims weep as they step into the basilica, believing they are standing at the very center of the Christian world. But the Vatican you see is only the surface. Behind guarded doors and under layers of protocol lies a maze of archives, locked chambers, and underground passageways that the public will never set foot in. If the walls could speak, they would tell stories stretching back over 1,000 years. Stories of miracles and martyrdom, but also of political schemes, buried scandals, and artifacts that challenge the very history they claim to protect. In the year 1523, the world saw the Vatican burn during the sack of Rome. It was rebuilt stronger than ever, but that tragedy also taught its rulers a lesson. Knowledge is power, and not all knowledge should be freely given. Over the centuries, popes and cardinals perfected the art of keeping certain things hidden from view. Today, their most guarded treasures are said to rest within the Vatican's secret archives, a vast underground vault said to stretch for miles beneath the city. Officially, it is a repository of historical documents. Unofficially, it is whispered to be a vault for the world's most dangerous and unsettling relics. The very name Vatican Secret Archives invites curiosity, but its Latin origin, secretum, actually means private. That single word changes everything. It is not necessarily that the Vatican calls these materials forbidden, but rather that they are reserved for those deemed worthy to see them. And those few who have been allowed inside describe strict rules that would make any teenager feel like they had stumbled into the world's most guarded school library. You can only request specific documents. You can never wander the stacks. You cannot take photos, and you cannot remove anything. Every moment you are watched. Why such intense security? Is it to protect fragile, priceless manuscripts from damage? Or is it to keep the world from reading truths that could change everything we think we know about religion, history, and even humanity itself? The question alone is enough to make your skin prickle. Because while the faithful come here to pray, there are whispers that deep beneath their feet, in locked rooms that see no sunlight, the Vatican guards objects that could shake the foundations of belief. And in this fortress of faith, the shadows are just as important as the light. Beneath the polished marble floors of Vatican City, far away from the chanting of choirs and the flow of tourists, lies a place almost no one will ever see. It is called the Vatican Secret Archives, though its keepers prefer the more polite Latin term, archivum secretum, which translates to private archive. But private is a gentle word for what is, in truth, one of the most heavily guarded collections of knowledge on the planet. Here, in dimly lit corridors lined with towering shelves, the history of over 12 centuries is locked away. The sheer scale of it is almost impossible to imagine. More than 50 kilometers of shelving stretch through rooms and tunnels, holding an estimated 1.3 million documents. These archives are not like a normal library. There are no reading rooms where you can casually browse, no friendly librarians eager to help you find what you're looking for. To enter, you must be a qualified scholar with a specific research topic, and even then, you can only request individual documents. You must name them exactly. If you do not know what to ask for, you will never see it. Visitors are watched at all times. No photographs, no photocopies, no wandering. When your allotted time is up, you are escorted out. The doors close behind you, and whatever you have seen remains yours to remember, but never to share freely. This place is so off-limits to the general public that even popes have admitted they have not explored every part of it. Some rooms have been sealed for decades, perhaps centuries. Others are so deep underground that only a small number of archivists are allowed inside. When researchers do get access, they are often given documents that seem safe enough. Papal correspondence from the Middle Ages, treaties between kingdoms, records of church councils. But even these carry a strange weight, as if they are crumbs from a far greater feast hidden in the dark. Whispers about what lies deeper in the vaults are as old as the archives themselves. Some say there are lost gospels that tell a very different story of Christianity. Others speak of letters between popes and emperors, plotting events that shaped the modern world. There are rumours of artifacts taken from ancient temples, maps that show places wiped from memory, and even strange objects of unknown origin locked away in climate-controlled cases. None of it is confirmed, of course. The Vatican does not deny the existence of the archives, but it neither confirms nor denies what is stored within. Silence is its greatest weapon. To most people, the Vatican Secret Archives might as well be another world, a world that cannot be photographed, toured, or explored without the highest level of permission. And that is what makes it so unsettling. Because if knowledge is harmless, why keep it hidden so far from the light? Why lock it away beneath stone and silence? The question lingers, heavy and unanswered, just like the air inside the vault you will never see. There is a strange feeling that comes when you realize the most important things in the world might be the ones you are never allowed to see. The Vatican has always presented itself as the guardian of holy relics, treasures that inspire faith and connect believers to the divine. You can visit its museums and marvel at golden chalices, centuries-old manuscripts, and paintings by the greatest artists in history. Yet for every object on display, there may be another kept in absolute secrecy. Not because it is fragile, not because it is too sacred, but because it might raise questions the Church does not want answered. Over the centuries, the Vatican has collected artifacts from every corner of the world. Some arrived as gifts from kings and emperors, others were taken during wars and conquests, and many were seized during the long centuries of the Inquisition. Officially, these objects are preserved for study or protection. Unofficially, some of them are said to be so strange, so disturbing, that their existence has never been acknowledged. Rumours swirl about scrolls that tell a different version of the life of Jesus, where his teachings focus on personal awakening rather than obedience to any institution. There are whispered stories of medieval books bound in human skin, their pages covered with symbols no scholar can fully decipher. Some say there are bones of saints who never appear in any historical record. Their identities a mystery, even to the archivists who guard them. Others speak of maps showing lands that do not appear on any globe, drawn centuries before modern exploration. These whispers are not wild fantasies made up by storytellers. They come from scholars who have spent brief, heavily monitored days inside the archives, from archivists who let slip a single guarded sentence, from researchers who claim to have been denied access to certain materials without explanation. Each story adds to a growing picture, a shadowy gallery of relics that are too dangerous to be shown. Not dangerous because they are cursed or haunted, though some claim they are, but because they threaten to disrupt the carefully crafted version of history the world has been taught to believe. Imagine finding an ancient letter between two popes discussing events centuries before they supposedly took place, or a chalice that carbon dating reveals to be thousands of years older than the New Testament, or a relic from a civilization that history insists never existed in Europe at all. Objects like these would not simply rewrite church history. They would rewrite the story of humanity itself. The Vatican has never confirmed such items are in its possession. It does not need to. The absence of denial is enough to keep the legends alive. And as long as the doors to the deepest vaults remain closed, the world can only imagine what sits in the dark, wrapped in velvet, locked in a chest, waiting for the day it is either revealed or forgotten forever. Until then, these are the objects the Church will never admit exist. There is a rumour whispered among theologians and historians, a story that surfaces every few decades before vanishing again into silence. It speaks of a single manuscript locked deep within the Vatican's private vaults, a gospel unlike any in the Bible, you know. This text, if it exists, does not depict Jesus as the untouchable, distant figure carved in marble and painted on cathedral ceilings. Instead, it describes him as a man walking among people, not to establish a religious institution, but to awaken something within each person, something powerful and personal that needs no priest or church to access. The earliest whispers claim this manuscript is older than the 4 Gospels in the New Testament. Some even say it predates the Council of Nicaea in the year 325, the gathering where church leaders decided which writings would form the official Christian canon and which would be cast aside as heresy. Those left out were banned, destroyed, or hidden away. If this gospel survived, it may have done so in secret, copied by careful hands, passed between hidden followers, and eventually captured by the church it quietly opposed. The text reportedly focuses not on miracles or divine punishments, but on the idea that every human being carries the spark of the divine inside them. It tells parables not about obedience to sacred authority, but about questioning, exploring, and discovering truth without fear. It suggests that salvation is not given by a church, but realized through personal awakening. If such a message had been accepted, the very structure of Christianity, as we know it, might never have been built. There would be no need for a hierarchy to act as the bridge between God and humanity. For the Vatican, such a manuscript would not simply be an interesting historical artifact. It would be a threat to centuries of tradition, doctrine, and power. That is why, according to those who claim to know, it remains locked away, seen only by a handful of archivists sworn to secrecy. To release it would be to risk unravelling the foundation of the faith they have spent nearly 2,000 years defending. Over the years, a few scholars have claimed to catch glimpses of its existence. A footnote in a forbidden index, a reference in a private letter between 2 cardinals in the 1700s. An anonymous researcher once described a bound manuscript in faded Greek script with no title, written in a tone both familiar and unsettling. He said the Jesus in those pages was not a ruler, not a sacrifice, but a guide pointing people toward their own inner power. Soon after speaking of it, he disappeared from public work, and the trail went cold. Whether this gospel is real or a legend born of wishful thinking, the idea alone is enough to provoke the imagination. What would it mean if the greatest religious figure in history taught that no one needs a church to reach the divine? And perhaps that is the very reason the Vatican will never let this gospel see the light of day. Somewhere in the dim, climate-controlled corridors of the Vatican's hidden vaults, it is said there rests a manuscript unlike any other in the Church's possession. Not a gospel, not a saint's biography, but a book that even the most devout priests might refuse to touch without a prayer on their lips. It is known only through rumour as the Book of Demonic Names. According to whispered accounts, it is a thick volume bound in dark leather, its edges blackened with age, its pages covered in looping medieval script that lists name after name of beings the Church has spent centuries warning people to avoid. The story goes that this book was not written by an enemy of the Church, but by its own servants. In the late Middle Ages, the Vatican was locked in a constant struggle against what it saw as the forces of darkness. Exorcisms were not rare ceremonies, but part of regular spiritual warfare. Priests, desperate to fight what they believed were real entities, began to collect every piece of information they could about these beings. Their names, their traits, the rituals said to summon them, even the signs of their presence. The result was a dangerous catalogue of knowledge that could, in the wrong hands, be used not for defence, but for invitation. The manuscript supposedly goes further than any public church document ever has. Some passages reportedly describe symbols to be drawn, incantations to be spoken, and offerings to be made to lure these beings into the physical world. Each name is accompanied by warnings, and yet the instructions are detailed enough to make anyone wonder whether the book was truly meant to repel evil or to control it. In an era when the line between science and superstition was razor thin, such a text would have been considered both a weapon and a temptation. By the 15th century, the Vatican is said to have realised the danger of letting this book circulate, even among trusted clergy. Too many unexplained events followed in its wake. Fires breaking out in isolated monasteries, entire parishes struck with sudden illness, priests vanishing without a trace after attempting to conduct forbidden rituals in private. The book was seized, copied once for the archives, and the rest of its known versions destroyed. The surviving original was locked away, its title never officially recorded, its contents erased from public memory. Those who claim to have seen it describe feeling a cold weight in the air, as if the book itself was aware of being opened. One archivist reportedly refused to work in the same room with it, saying its pages seemed to whisper in a language he could not understand. Whether that was the product of imagination or something darker, no one can say. But the Vatican's silence only deepens the unease. If this book truly exists, it would be one of the most dangerous volumes ever written, not because it proves the existence of demons, but because it gives them names. And once something has a name, it becomes far easier to call. In the heart of the Vatican's most restricted archive, behind layers of stone, iron, and silence, there is said to be a single sheet of parchment so old its edges crumble at the touch. On it, written in tight Latin script, is a prophecy that has haunted the Church for centuries. It is known as the Prophecy of the Last Pope, a vision attributed to Saint Malachy, a 12th century Irish archbishop, who was said to have been blessed with a gift for seeing the future. The story claims that in the year 1140, Malachy travelled to Rome to meet with the Pope. During his visit, he experienced a vision so vivid and terrifying that he wrote it down in secret before handing it over to the Vatican. The prophecy, according to legend, described a list of every pope who would reign from Malachy's time until the very last pontiff. Each was given a strange motto or symbol that somehow reflected their life, their origin, or their fate. For centuries, the list seemed almost like a curiosity, a harmless puzzle for scholars to study. That is, until the 20th century, when the descriptions began to match the popes of the modern era with eerie accuracy. The final entry speaks of a man called Peter the Roman, who would lead the Church through great trials, only to see the city of 7 hills destroyed and the Last Judgment begin. Publicly, the Vatican treats this prophecy with caution, even dismissal, calling it a likely forgery from the 1500s. But those who believe it is genuine say the Church's unease speaks volumes. If the prophecy is real, and if we are truly approaching the end of the list, it would mean that the end of the papacy, and perhaps much more, is close at hand. In recent decades, whispers have grown louder. The current line of succession matches the number predicted. Some even claim subtle references to the prophecy have been made in papal speeches, hidden like coded warnings to the faithful. The parchment itself, if it exists, is not on display in any Vatican museum. It is not published in any official archive. Instead, it is said to rest in a locked case deep beneath the Apostolic Palace, accessible only to a select few archivists and certain high-ranking clergy. Those who claim to have seen it speak of ink faded to brown, a hand cramped from hurried writing, and a seal still intact, pressed into the wax by a ring that belonged to a pope long dead. Whether the prophecy of the last pope is divine revelation, clever invention, or something far more human, its existence is unsettling. Because if it is true, it means the Vatican already knows how the story ends. And if it is false, one must wonder why they guard it with the same care they give to holy relics. Either way, it remains hidden from the faithful, locked away with the rest of the Church's most guarded secrets, waiting for a day when the truth can no longer be delayed. During the long and shadowed centuries of the Middle Ages, knowledge was a dangerous thing. Books were not just sources of wisdom, they could be seen as weapons, threats to the spiritual and political order. When the Inquisition rose to power in the 13th century, its mission was not only to hunt heretics, but to erase anything that challenged the Church's authority. That included an entire class of books known as grimoires, handwritten manuals filled with spells, curses, rituals, and other teachings considered forbidden. These were not fairy tales or harmless superstitions. Many were carefully compiled by scholars, monks, and wandering mystics who believed they were documenting real forces hidden in the fabric of the world. Grimoires could contain anything from herbal remedies and protective charms to instructions for summoning angels or binding spirits. Some were beautifully illustrated, with diagrams of celestial alignments and strange symbols meant to channel invisible energies. Others were crude and unsettling, their pages scrawled in ink that had long since faded to brown, describing rituals in disturbing detail. For the Inquisition, these books represented a direct threat. They blurred the line between religion and magic, between divine miracles and human control over the supernatural. Across Europe, inquisitors searched libraries, monasteries, and private homes for any trace of them. When discovered, most grimoires were burned, their ashes scattered so no one could reconstruct their contents. But not all were destroyed. Some, especially the more elaborate or dangerous ones, were seized and carried to Rome. The reasoning was simple. To fight the darkness, the Church must understand it. And so, deep in the Vatican's growing archive, a collection began to form, a secret library of banned medieval grimoires. It is said that among these are volumes bound in worn leather, their covers unmarked except for a small symbol pressed into the surface. Some are written in Latin, others in languages no one alive can speak fluently. A few are coded, their true meaning hidden behind layers of cipher. They cover subjects the Church has never acknowledged publicly: how to invoke spirits for guidance, how to curse an enemy from afar, how to craft talismans for protection or power. Each one is a reminder that the medieval world was a place where faith and fear coexisted, and where people would risk their lives to seek knowledge that promised even the smallest glimpse of control over the unknown. Those who believe in their existence say that modern archivists almost never speak of them. If they are mentioned at all, it is in hushed tones, as though even the idea of these books is dangerous. Perhaps the Vatican fears that releasing them could inspire a resurgence of the practices it worked so hard to stamp out. Or perhaps it fears something deeper, that hidden among the pages are truths about the universe that cannot be easily explained away. Whatever the case, These banned medieval grimoires remain locked away, their spells and secrets sealed under the weight of centuries, waiting in silence where the light of day will never reach them. In the spring of the year 1633, one of the most famous trials in history unfolded inside the chambers of the Roman Inquisition. The man at the center of it was Galileo Galilei, the brilliant Italian scientist whose telescopes had revealed moons circling Jupiter and evidence that the Earth revolved around the Sun. His discoveries challenged centuries of church teaching, which held that Earth was the fixed center of the universe. Official history tells us that Galileo was tried, found guilty of heresy, and forced to recant his ideas. But what most people never hear is that the complete transcripts of his trial, the original, unedited records, are said to be locked deep inside the Vatican, away from the public eye. The version of events taught in schools comes largely from summaries and fragments of these records, carefully preserved but never fully released. The story is framed as a clash between faith and science, with the Church eventually admitting its error centuries later. Yet some scholars believe the missing pages contain a far more troubling account. Rumours suggest they detail not just formal questioning, but private interrogations in which Galileo was pressured, intimidated, and possibly threatened with torture if he refused to comply. In an era when the Inquisition had the authority to imprison or execute anyone it deemed a heretic, such threats would have been terrifyingly real. Some believe the transcripts also contain correspondence between high-ranking cardinals discussing how to manage the trial's outcome to protect the Church's image. If true, it would mean the verdict was decided before the first question was asked, and the trial itself was little more than a performance meant to make submission look like justice. There are even claims that the original notes show Galileo trying to negotiate, offering to present his findings as mere hypotheses rather than absolute truths in exchange for his freedom. If these details exist, their release could reshape how the world views this chapter of history. Instead of a simple misunderstanding between a scientist and the Church, it would become a case study in how powerful institutions can silence voices that threaten their authority. This would not just be about astronomy. It would be about the lengths to which the Vatican was willing to go to control the narrative of human knowledge. The Vatican has never admitted to hiding these complete records, but its refusal to open all trial documents to independent historians fuels suspicion. Officially, it claims the archives are available for research, but with restrictions so tight that many key files remain inaccessible. It is this secrecy that keeps the mystery alive. Were Galileo's final words in the trial chamber truly those of a man convinced he was wrong, or of someone forced into submission by fear? The answer may still be sitting in a locked cabinet beneath Vatican City, written in ink almost 400 years old, waiting for the day the Church decides the world is ready to read it in full. Somewhere in the hidden storage rooms beneath Vatican City, away from the gold-lined altars and polished glass cases of its museums, there is said to be a relic, unlike the jeweled chalices or ancient manuscripts the Church is known for. It is not beautiful, not even in a tragic way. It is a simple white papal tunic, now stained a deep, rusty brown. The marks are not from age or dust, they are from blood. According to the whispers passed quietly between archivists, this tunic was worn by a pope during an assassination attempt, an attack that was never fully revealed to the public. Official Vatican history records a few incidents where popes were injured or threatened, most famously the attempted shooting of Pope John Paul II in May of 1981. But the tunic in question is not from that event. Its fabric is older, its style belonging to a time before television cameras and modern media. The exact date of the attack is uncertain, though some researchers suspect it happened in the late 19th or early 20th century, when the political landscape of Italy and the Vatican was especially volatile. It was a time when the Pope's authority was under siege, and secret societies, anarchists, and foreign agents all had reason to see him removed. The story goes that the Pope was addressing a small, private gathering within the Apostolic Palace when an assailant managed to get close enough to strike. Whether it was a concealed blade or a small firearm depends on the version of the story being told, but in both, the attack was sudden and brutal. The Pope survived, perhaps saved by quick intervention from the Swiss Guard, but his white tunic was left soaked in blood. Instead of destroying or discarding it, the garment was preserved, folded away in a chest, and eventually placed into deep storage within the archives. What makes this relic particularly eerie are the claims made by the few who say they have handled it. They speak of a faint metallic smell that lingers despite more than a century having passed, an odour that seems stronger than what dried blood should produce after so long. Some even describe an unsettling heaviness in the air when it is unwrapped, as though the memory of violence still clings to the fibres. Whether these sensations are the product of imagination or something stranger is impossible to say. The Vatican has never confirmed the existence of this tunic, and no photograph of it has ever been made public. If it does exist, it remains hidden, not because it is dangerous, but because it would open questions the Church might prefer remain unanswered. Who attacked the Pope, and why? Why was it kept instead of quietly destroyed? Perhaps it is seen as a reminder of survival, a silent witness to a moment when the head of the Catholic Church came within inches of death. Or perhaps it is kept because some stains, no matter how much time passes, are impossible to wash away. Deep within the Vatican's labyrinth of storerooms, far from the glittering chapels where relics of famous saints are displayed for the faithful, there is said to be a reliquary that almost no one outside a small circle of clergy has ever seen. Unlike the golden shrines honouring St. Peter or St. Paul, this one bears no name. It holds the skeletal remains of a figure known only in whispers as the unknown saint. Encased in an ornate reliquary of gilded silver, the bones are arranged with care, the skull resting gently, as if in eternal sleep. Yet there is no plaque, no inscription, no historical record tying this figure to any recognised saint in church history. The origin of these remains is shrouded in mystery. Some claim they were discovered centuries ago in the catacombs beneath Rome, alongside early Christian martyrs whose identities were lost to time. Others suggest a stranger story, that the bones were taken from a remote monastery, brought to the Vatican under orders that were never explained, and quietly locked away. What is certain is that these remains have been venerated in secret, visited only by select cardinals and archivists, as though they carry a significance known only to a few. The lack of records surrounding the unknown saint is what makes this relic so unsettling. The Catholic Church is meticulous about documenting its saints, recording every miracle, martyrdom, and act of piety in exhaustive detail. Yet here is a complete skeleton preserved in the most sacred city on earth, honoured in private ceremonies but absent from every official list. No birth, no death, no canonization. It is as though this figure was erased from history, yet kept close enough to guard. Some believe the secrecy may be because the remains are not of a saint at all. There are rumours that tests once performed on the bones revealed anomalies, an unusual height for the period, a healed injury that should have been fatal, or even traces of substances not typically associated with human burial. The Vatican, of course, has never commented on such claims, but the speculation persists. Others suggest the unknown saint may have belonged to a sect of early Christianity whose beliefs were later deemed heretical, making public veneration politically dangerous, even if the person had been a revered spiritual figure in their own time. Those who have stood in the reliquary's presence describe a stillness in the air, as if the room itself is holding its breath. The glass that covers the bones is said to be thick and slightly clouded, distorting the view just enough to make the figure seem less like a collection of remains and more like someone resting in shadow. Whether it is a forgotten martyr, a controversial holy figure, or someone whose life defies the Church's accepted history, the unknown saint remains hidden from the faithful. And perhaps that is the point. Some truths, the Vatican seems to believe, are too complicated for the world beyond its walls. Far beneath the Vatican, in a vault where the air is carefully measured and the temperature never changes, there is said to be a relic that has inspired centuries of faith, war, and legend. It is only a fragment now, a small and unassuming piece of metal, but to those who believe, it is part of the spear of Longinus, the weapon said to have pierced the side of Jesus Christ as he hung on the cross. According to the Gospel of John, a Roman soldier thrust his spear into Christ's body to ensure he was dead, and in that moment, blood and water flowed from the wound. Over time, that soldier was named Longinus, and his weapon became one of the most sought-after relics in Christian history. The full spear has been claimed by several churches and empires over the centuries. Pieces have been displayed in cathedrals from Vienna to Armenia, each with its own story of how it came to rest there. But some scholars insist the Vatican has its own piece, one they do not display or publicly acknowledge. The fragment is said to have been acquired during the Crusades, brought to Rome by knights who claimed it came from the very spear carried at Golgotha. Whether it was broken during battle or split deliberately, so that multiple factions could claim it, no one can say for certain. This particular piece, if it exists, is not shaped like the elegant weapons seen in paintings. It is rough and aged, its edges jagged, its surface darkened by time. The Vatican reportedly keeps it in climate-controlled storage, sealed in a glass case within a reinforced chamber deep below the Apostolic Palace. Only a handful of people have been allowed to view it, and even fewer have been permitted to handle it. For them, the experience is said to be unforgettable. Some describe a heavy, almost electric presence in the room. Others claim it felt no different than standing before any ancient artifact, their awe coming not from the object itself, but from the history it represents. Why would the Vatican keep such a relic hidden? One theory is that its authenticity is uncertain, and displaying it publicly would invite scrutiny the Church prefers to avoid. Another theory is that the relic is genuine, and its spiritual significance is so great that it is considered too sacred or too powerful to be exposed to the world. Throughout history, relics of this nature have been said to inspire miracles, but also to spark wars. By keeping it out of sight, the Vatican may believe they are protecting both the relic and the world from the chaos that could follow its revelation. Whether the fragment is a piece of divine history or simply a shard of ancient iron, its story is bound to one of the most significant events in human belief. And as long as it remains hidden deep underground, it will continue to fuel the mystery, leaving the faithful to wonder if the very spear that touched the body of Christ rests unseen in the heart of the Catholic world. Deep beneath the Vatican museums, past rows of carefully catalogued artifacts, there is rumoured to be a room that holds the relics of Rome's pagan past, objects the Church has chosen not to display. Among these is said to rest a bronze idol, small enough to be carried in two hands, yet heavy with history. Its surface is dark with age, the once shining metal dulled by centuries, but the features are still clear. It depicts a figure, neither entirely male nor female, crowned with a wreath of leaves, holding symbols of abundance in each hand. Its body is stylized, with exaggerated curves that leave no doubt it once belonged to a fertility cult from the days before Christianity. In the earliest centuries of Rome, statues like this were common. They stood in temples, private homes, and even fields believed to bless crops, protect families, and ensure the continuation of life. The cults that worshipped them were deeply woven into Roman society, blending ritual, seasonal festivals, and a worldview centered on the cycles of nature. But when Christianity rose to prominence and eventually became the state religion in the 4th century, such idols became targets. Temples were destroyed, statues smashed or melted down, and the faiths they represented were declared forbidden. Somehow, this particular idol survived. The story whispered among Vatican insiders is that it was unearthed during renovations beneath a Roman church in the 19th century. Instead of sending it to a public museum, the artifact was quietly moved to Vatican storage. The reasoning was simple. The Church did not wish to risk the idol becoming an object of fascination, or worse, veneration. To display it openly would be to acknowledge the powerful spiritual traditions that existed long before Christianity took root, traditions that, in some ways, parallel the rituals the Church itself practices today. Those who claim to have seen the idol describe it as strangely compelling. Its craftsmanship is exquisite, its details so fine that even the strands of the laurel wreath seem alive. Some say it carries a presence, an echo of the countless prayers and offerings it once received. Others insist it is nothing more than an artifact, its power long since faded, but they admit it has an aura that makes it hard to look away. The Vatican has never confirmed its existence, but if the rumours are true, the idol remains locked in a climate-controlled case, its form wrapped in darkness, far from the public eye. Perhaps it is kept as a reminder of the Church's victory over the old gods, or perhaps it is hidden because such a tangible piece of the pagan past challenges the idea of an unbroken Christian heritage. Whatever the reason, the bronze idol endures in secrecy, a silent witness to the time before the cross, when Rome's heart still beat in rhythm with the turning of the seasons and the worship of the earth itself. In one of the most shadowed corners of the Vatican's restricted collections, there is said to be an object that carries the weight of fear more than faith. It is a mask, forged from darkened iron, its surface pitted with age. The eyes are narrow slits, the mouth a small grated opening. To anyone who sees it, there is no mistaking its purpose. This was no ceremonial ornament or theatrical costume. This was the mask of an executioner, worn by a man sanctioned by the Church to carry out the grim sentences of the Inquisition. During the height of the Inquisition, from the 13th to the 17th centuries, the Vatican authorized the investigation, trial, and punishment of those accused of heresy. While much of the focus was on interrogation and conversion, there were times when the verdict was death. The executioner was a figure both feared and avoided, a necessary agent of what the Church saw as divine justice. His identity was often hidden, both to protect him from revenge and to strip him of individuality. Behind the mask, he was not a man, he was the instrument of the will of the Holy Office. The mask itself is said to be heavy, the metal thick enough to protect its wearer, but oppressive in its weight. Inside, leather straps would have secured it tightly to the head, allowing little movement. The design was meant to be intimidating, erasing any trace of humanity from the face that delivered judgment. Those who claim to have seen the mask in the Vatican's possession say the metal still smells faintly of oil and smoke, as though it has absorbed the air of the places it once stood, damp dungeons, torchlit chambers, and the open squares where sentences were carried out. It is believed that this particular mask belonged to an executioner who served in Rome during the late 16th century, a period when the Inquisition was especially active. Historical records from that era mention a man known only by an alias, described as efficient, silent, and unwavering in his duties. Whether the mask in the Vatican once hid his face cannot be proven, but the connection adds to its grim mystique. Why would the Vatican keep such an object? Perhaps as a historical record, a reminder of the lengths to which the Church once went to protect its authority. Or perhaps it is kept out of sight, because it represents a chapter in history the Vatican would rather not display alongside its treasures of art and devotion. Unlike a saint's relic or a sacred manuscript, this mask inspires no reverence, only unease. If the mask truly rests in the Vatican's collection, it is unlikely the public will ever see it. It would serve as a physical reminder that behind the marble halls and painted ceilings, there was once a time when faith and fear walked hand in hand, and when the face of justice was hidden behind cold, unyielding iron. Tucked away in the Vatican's most restricted collection of ancient maps and manuscripts, there is rumoured to be a single piece of parchment that defies everything we think we know about history. It is not large, barely the size of a modern poster, but it holds a detail so impossible that some believe its very existence could rewrite the story of human exploration. The map, drawn in careful ink strokes, appears to show the entire continent of Antarctica not as the frozen wasteland we know today, but as a land free of ice, with mountains, rivers, and valleys clearly marked. To understand why this is so strange, you have to remember that Antarctica was not even officially discovered until the early 19th century, and its ice-covered landscape has existed for millions of years. The idea that someone could have charted its underlying landmass before modern sonar and satellite imaging seems impossible. Yet the details on this map reportedly match what scientists have only recently confirmed through advanced technology, as if the cartographer had somehow seen beneath the ice long before such a thing was thought possible. The origin of the map is unclear. Some say it is a copy of an even older chart passed through the hands of explorers, scholars, and secret societies before ending up in Rome. Others believe it was created during the Renaissance, when the Church was collecting knowledge from every corner of the known world. There is even a fringe theory that it is a remnant of a lost civilization, one that had the capability to map the globe with incredible precision thousands of years before recorded history. Those who claim to have seen the map say it is remarkably well preserved, stored under glass in a climate-controlled drawer. The lines are drawn with meticulous care, the coastline of Antarctica rendered in a way that suggests not guesswork, but direct observation. There are no labels naming it as Antarctica, yet the outline is unmistakable. The surrounding seas are dotted with small illustrations of ships, sea creatures, and wind patterns, suggesting the work of someone deeply knowledgeable about navigation. The Vatican has never acknowledged having such a map, but its existence has been hinted at by a handful of researchers who say they were granted limited access to the archives. According to them, the map is kept alongside other early cartographic treasures, but unlike those, it is rarely studied, almost as if it is being deliberately ignored. If the map is genuine, it raises unsettling questions. How could such accurate knowledge exist so long before modern science? Who created it? And why has it remained hidden? For the Vatican, perhaps the danger lies in what it suggests, that human history may be far older and far stranger than the official record allows. As long as it stays locked away, the world can dismiss it as a rumour. But if it were ever revealed, it could challenge the very timeline of civilization itself. In a quiet, climate-controlled drawer somewhere deep within the Vatican's archives, there is said to be a bundle of letters tied together with faded ribbon. The paper has yellowed with age, and the ink is uneven, as if written in haste or under great strain. These are not official church reports or polished theological arguments. They are personal letters from a Vatican-appointed exorcist, never meant for the public eye. Each one contains first-hand accounts of possessions so disturbing that the Church decided they could never be published. The exorcist, whose name is deliberately withheld in the few internal references to his work, served in the mid-20th century, travelling across Europe and occasionally to other continents when the Vatican deemed his presence necessary. His letters were written to a single recipient, a high-ranking official within the Church who oversaw the exorcism ministry. They describe in haunting detail the events he witnessed, cases where the afflicted spoke in languages they had never learned, objects moved without human touch, and voices that shifted in pitch and tone in ways no human throat could produce. One letter reportedly tells of a young woman in rural Italy who, during the rite, began revealing intimate details about the lives of everyone present in the room, secrets they had never spoken aloud. Another describes a man in South America who, after hours of violent struggle, fell into complete stillness and then spoke in a voice that echoed through the chapel as if coming from every wall at once. The exorcist does not sensationalize these accounts. In fact, his words are often cautious. his tone that of a man trying to convince himself of what he saw while also questioning his own sanity. What makes these letters so unsettling is not just the events they describe, but the emotional weight behind them. The Exorcist admits to nights where he could not sleep, where the memory of a voice or a face would return to him in the dark. He writes of moments where he feared he had failed, where the afflicted person slipped away not into peace, but into something else, something he dared not name. In several letters, he pleads for guidance, asking whether some cases are beyond even the Church's power to resolve. The Vatican's decision to hide these letters may come from a desire to protect the faithful from fear, or from the risk of inspiring fascination with dangerous practices. Or perhaps the accounts are simply too raw, too personal, too filled with unanswered questions. Whatever the reason, the letters remain sealed, their contents known only to a few archivists and clergy. If they were ever released, they would paint a picture of exorcism far different from the orderly, controlled rites described in official manuals. They would show it as a battle not only for a soul, but for the mind and faith of the one tasked with saving it. And in those pages, the world would see that even the Vatican's most experienced warriors of faith sometimes walked away unsure if they had truly won. Deep in the storage vaults of the Vatican, among the manuscripts and relics that rarely see the light of day, there is said to be a small wooden chest lined with velvet. Inside rests a collection of tools, unlike anything most people associate with the early Middle Ages. They are surgical instruments, forged from steel so finely worked that they could rival modern precision tools. There are scalpels with blades still sharp enough to slice parchment, forceps with delicate grips designed for intricate procedures, and curved needles clearly meant for suturing wounds. Each piece is carefully labelled and catalogued, yet the official descriptions are vague, avoiding any direct mention of their advanced design. The instruments are believed to date back to somewhere between the 6th and 9th centuries, a time that history books often call the Dark Ages. This was supposedly an era when Europe had lost much of the knowledge of the ancient world, when science and medicine lagged far behind the achievements of Greece and Rome. Yet here is physical evidence suggesting that someone, somewhere, had not only preserved medical knowledge, but had improved upon it. The craftsmanship is far too refined to be an accident. Whoever made these tools understood anatomy and the demands of delicate surgery. The mystery deepens when considering where they might have come from. Some historians speculate they could have been created in the Byzantine Empire, which maintained closer ties to ancient medical traditions. Others wonder if they were the work of monastic scholars who secretly studied and advanced such knowledge, while the outside world fell into turmoil. The fact that they are in the Vatican's possession hints that the Church acquired them long ago, perhaps as part of its vast collection of preserved knowledge during the Middle Ages. What makes this collection so controversial is the way it challenges the established narrative of history. If advanced surgical procedures were possible in the so-called Dark Ages, then the timeline of medical progress would need to be reconsidered. It would suggest that human innovation did not simply vanish after the fall of Rome, but continued quietly in places that historians have overlooked. Those who claim to have seen the instruments in person describe a strange feeling when holding them, as if the weight of the tools carried the weight of their history. They are not ceremonial or symbolic. They are practical, efficient, and clearly built for use. Yet there is no public record of who used them, what operations they performed, or how many lives they may have saved. The Vatican has never made this collection available for study, and it is unlikely they will. Perhaps they fear the questions it would raise about the so-called lost centuries, or perhaps they simply wish to protect the artifacts from the world's curiosity. Either way, the tools remain locked away, silent proof that the past may have been far more advanced and far more surprising than we have been taught to believe. In the quietest section of the Vatican's archive, far from the ornate shelves filled with illuminated manuscripts, there is said to be a set of large, flat drawers used for storing delicate documents. Inside those drawers, according to whispers from archivists, lie a series of strange blueprints that do not match any known period of engineering. The paper is old, the edges frayed, but the drawings themselves are startlingly complex. They show designs for machines that appear to be centuries ahead of their time, devices with gears, pulleys, and intricate mechanisms that would not become common knowledge until the Industrial Revolution or even later. The origin of these blueprints is a mystery. There are no signatures, no maker's marks, and no notes linking them to a specific inventor. Some of the designs resemble early flying machines, with wings shaped like those of birds or bats. Others show complex water pumps, rotary engines, or what appears to be a primitive version of a steam turbine. One drawing even suggests a type of mechanical calculator, the kind of device historians usually credit to the 17th century. Yet this sketch appears to be much older. The ink and parchment have reportedly been tested, suggesting dates as early as the 14th century, though some believe they could be older still. If this is true, it would mean that someone, possibly working in secret, had conceptualized technology far beyond the capabilities of their time. This raises a troubling question. If such knowledge existed, why was it never developed? Was it suppressed, forgotten, or deliberately hidden? One theory suggests these designs could have been the work of an unknown genius whose inventions were confiscated by the church, either because they were considered dangerous or because they threatened to disrupt the social order. Another theory is that the blueprints are copies of even older documents, preserved by scholars who understood their significance but lacked the resources to bring them to life. There are even more fringe ideas, claiming the designs might be remnants of a lost civilization whose technological achievements were erased from the official history books. Those who say they have glimpsed the blueprints describe them as strangely mesmerizing. The lines are precise, the shading intricate, the scale carefully measured. Whoever drew them had both artistic skill and a deep understanding of mechanics. Yet, for all their detail, the designs leave gaps, as if they were meant for someone who already understood the principles behind them. The Vatican has never confirmed the existence of these blueprints, and without public access, they remain locked in the realm of speculation. But if they are real, they suggest that human ingenuity has surfaced in bursts throughout history, only to be lost or buried before it could change the world. Perhaps the machines they depict would have transformed life centuries earlier, or perhaps they were locked away for a reason, their potential for both creation and destruction deemed too great for the world outside those guarded walls. In a locked cabinet deep within the Vatican's less travelled storage halls, there is said to rest a chalice, unlike the gilded, jewel-encrusted cups displayed in the museums above. This one is simple, made of tarnished silver, its surface etched with faint patterns that time has nearly erased. To the untrained eye, it might look like just another antique vessel from centuries past. But among those who work in the archives, it carries a reputation that keeps it from ever being used. They call it the cursed chalice, and according to the stories, anyone who has drunk from it has met with sudden and unusual misfortune. The history of the chalice is pieced together from fragments of old records and whispered accounts. It first appears in Vatican inventories during the early 18th century, though the cup itself is clearly much older. The most common story claims it was seized from a private chapel belonging to a wealthy, noble family in France, after a string of tragedies left them with no heirs. The records note its arrival in Rome, but make no mention of its unusual reputation. That came later, after several incidents involving those who handled it. One tale tells of a bishop who used the chalice during a private mass, only to fall gravely ill days later from an illness that baffled physicians. Another story involves a visiting dignitary who insisted on drinking wine from it as a curiosity, only to suffer a series of personal and financial disasters within the year. Whether these events were coincidence or the result of something more sinister, the pattern was enough for the Vatican to quietly remove the cup from liturgical use and place it into storage. What makes the chalice's reputation more unsettling is that it has never been fully studied. No chemical analysis of its metal has been made public, and the faint patterns engraved into its surface have never been officially decoded. Some believe the etchings are purely decorative, while others think they may be symbols tied to a long-forgotten ritual or curse. A few even speculate that the chalice may have been deliberately crafted as a vessel of harm, intended not to bless those who drank from it, but to bring them ruin. Those who claim to have seen it in recent decades describe a strange feeling when standing near it, a sense of unease that is hard to explain. The silver, though polished on rare occasions, never seems to lose its dull, shadowy tone. It is as if the object itself resists being restored to beauty. The Vatican has kept the chalice sealed in its protective case for generations, and no one has been permitted to use it in any ceremony since the 18th century. Perhaps it is simply an abundance of caution. Or perhaps, within those guarded walls, they know something the rest of the world does not, that some objects carry more than history, and that the wrong sip from the wrong cup can alter a life forever. Deep in a dimly lit chamber of the Vatican's reliquary storage, there is said to be a small glass case containing a handful of weathered stone fragments. At first glance, they seem ordinary, irregular shards of reddish clay and pale limestone, no larger than a person's palm. Yet the handwritten label affixed to the case bears words that have stirred centuries of quiet fascination. From the Tower of Babel. According to the Book of Genesis, the Tower of Babel was built in the ancient city of Babylon by a united humanity who sought to reach the heavens. God, displeased with their pride, scattered the people and confused their language, halting construction forever. Most historians and archaeologists regard the story as allegory, a symbolic explanation for the diversity of languages, rather than a record of an actual building. Yet the presence of these shards, in one of the most secure collections on Earth, suggests that someone, at some point, believed they were genuine relics of that mythic structure. The origin of the fragments is cloaked in uncertainty. A small, faded entry in an 18th century Vatican ledger notes their arrival from the east, sent by a missionary working in what is now Iraq. That missionary claimed to have recovered them from the ruins of a massive ziggurat near ancient Babylon, ruins that local tradition linked to the biblical tower. Whether the stones were taken as souvenirs or as holy artifacts is unclear, but they were transported to Rome and placed in storage almost immediately. What is curious is the level of care given to their preservation. The reliquary that houses them is made of crystal and gold, its design matching those used for relics of saints. The interior is lined with fine silk, and the shards rest on individual cushions as though they were priceless jewels. This kind of treatment is rarely given to items the Church regards as purely symbolic. It suggests that, at least to some within the Vatican, these stones might be more than legend. A few scholars who have quietly inquired about the shards have been told they are mythic keepsakes, preserved for their connection to biblical tradition rather than any proven authenticity. Yet no public analysis of their composition or age has ever been released. If tested, they could simply prove to be ancient bricks from one of the many ziggurats built in Mesopotamia. Or they could point to something stranger, evidence that a structure resembling the Tower of Babel once stood, lending a sliver of truth to a story thought to be pure myth. For now, the shards remain in their sealed reliquary, untouched by modern investigation. Perhaps the Vatican prefers the mystery to the certainty of an answer. After all, so much of faith rests on the unseen, the unproven, the believed. And maybe, in those unremarkable-looking pieces of stone, they see a tangible reminder of a time when the world spoke one language, and humanity dared to build a stairway to the sky. Locked inside one of the Vatican's most secure artifact rooms is said to be an object unlike anything else in its vast collection. It is small enough to fit in both hands, dark in colour with a faint metallic sheen, yet cold and heavy in a way that feels unnatural for stone. According to the handwritten notes that accompany it, The relic was carved from a meteorite that fell to Earth centuries ago. The strange part is that no one can agree on who carved it, when it was made, or why it seems to be linked to a string of unsettling events. The earliest record of the relic appears in a 16th century Vatican inventory, where it is simply described as a sacred stone from the heavens. That entry claims it was brought to Rome by a missionary returning from a remote part of North Africa. Local tribes there told a story of a fireball that lit up the night sky generations earlier, crashing into the desert and leaving behind a blackened stone unlike any found in the region. The people revered it as a gift from the gods, eventually carving it into a shape that no one today can quite define. A blend of geometric patterns and abstract forms, with edges worn smooth by centuries of handling. Those who claim to have studied the relic say it reacts strangely to its surroundings. It feels unnaturally cold to the touch, even in warm rooms. In certain light, its surface seems to shimmer faintly, as if tiny flecks of metal are embedded in the stone. One archivist who handled it for documentation reportedly experienced a sudden, sharp ringing in his ears that lasted for hours afterward. Another claimed that photographs of the relic never came out quite right, with the image slightly blurred no matter how still the camera was. Whether these stories are exaggerations or not, the relic's unusual nature was enough for the Vatican to move it into deep storage in the 18th century. It has rarely been brought out since, and even then only for brief inspection. Theories about its origin range from the purely scientific, that it is simply a carved piece of iron-rich meteorite, to the fantastical, suggesting it might be linked to ancient civilizations or even non-human visitors. The Vatican, as expected, has offered no comment on such ideas. If the relic is truly carved from a meteorite, it represents a fascinating intersection of natural wonder and human craftsmanship. It would mean that someone, centuries ago, recognized the uniqueness of a stone that fell from the sky and decided to shape it into something lasting. But if the stories of its strange effects are true, then perhaps the stone carries more than just cosmic history. For now, it remains sealed away, a silent puzzle in the heart of the Vatican's collection. Whether it is simply an ancient curiosity or an object with powers we do not yet understand, it continues to fuel whispers of a past where the sky itself sent gifts, and maybe warnings, down to earth. In a narrow drawer within the Vatican's archive of forbidden texts lies an object that even the archivists speak of in lowered voices. It is a single sheet of parchment, browned with age and sealed in a protective case. Across its surface runs a series of markings unlike any known language, symbols that twist and curl into shapes that seem almost alive. The Church refers to it in private as the demon's contract, and, according to the story, passed down through the centuries. It was created in the aftermath of a possession case in the 17th century that defied explanation. The account begins in the year 1676 in a small convent in southern Italy. A young nun began to show signs of what her sisters described as violent and unholy influence. She spoke in voices that were not her own, recited passages in languages she had never studied, and displayed knowledge of events far beyond her secluded life. The local clergy called for an exorcism, and over the course of several days, the rite was performed with intensity and urgency. But during one particularly violent episode, the nun collapsed into a strange calm and began to write. Witnesses said her eyes were closed the entire time, yet her hand moved across the page with impossible speed, forming line after line of the strange script. When she finished, she dropped the quill, and the possession seemed to end abruptly. The nun had no memory of writing anything, and claimed not to recognize the symbols. The parchment was sent to the Vatican for examination, where scholars, linguists, and theologians attempted to decode it. None succeeded. What made the document even more unsettling was the style of the script itself. Each line seemed to shift slightly when viewed from different angles, as though the letters were resisting being read. Some who studied it for too long reported headaches or vivid nightmares. One early theory suggested it was a cipher, but attempts to break it using known codes of the era failed. Another theory claimed it was a constructed language, but its structure did not match any linguistic patterns on record. The Vatican stored the parchment deep within its restricted archives, away from public view. Over the centuries, a handful of scholars were granted brief access to it, yet all left with more questions than answers. Some speculated it was an elaborate hoax designed to frighten the faithful, though no one could explain how a cloistered nun with no exposure to cryptography could have produced it. Others, leaning toward the supernatural, believed it was indeed a kind of contract, an agreement written between a human soul and something far darker, a physical trace of a spiritual battle. To this day, the demon's contract remains undeciphered. Its symbols have never matched any script discovered in archaeology or recorded in human history. Whether it is the product of a mind under duress, a code awaiting the right key, or something not entirely human, it continues to rest in silence, behind glass, a reminder that some mysteries are written in a language we may never learn to read. In a temperature-controlled chamber beneath the Vatican museums, there is said to be a glass case holding one of the most unnerving artifacts in the Church's possession. It is the preserved body of a small figure, no taller than a child, wrapped tightly in aged linen. Covering its face is an ornate golden mask, worked with intricate patterns of leaves, animals, and symbols whose meanings have long been forgotten. No inscription marks its origin. No record names who it was in life. To the archivists, it is simply called the masked mummy. The first mention of the mummy in Vatican records appears in the late 19th century, when it was reportedly delivered from a private collector in Cairo. How that collector acquired it is unknown. Some say it was taken from a tomb near the Nile, hidden away to avoid the growing scrutiny of archaeologists at the time. Others whisper that it was never found in Egypt at all, but in a remote monastery in the eastern Mediterranean, where it had been guarded for centuries by monks who claimed it was not safe for the public to see. The golden mask is the most striking feature. Unlike typical burial masks from known ancient cultures, this one is neither purely Egyptian nor Roman nor Greek, but a strange blend of styles. The eyes are large and almond-shaped, the lips curved in a faint, unreadable expression. Around the edges are tiny, precise carvings of animals, some identifiable, others resembling creatures no one can name. The gold has aged to a warm, dull sheen, but the craftsmanship remains flawless. Attempts to study the mummy have been limited. The Vatican has never allowed a full unwrapping, citing the need to preserve the body. X-ray scans reportedly show a human skeleton beneath the wrappings, but the proportions seem unusual, with elongated fingers and a slightly larger than average skull. Some researchers have suggested it could be the remains of a child from a noble family, buried with extraordinary honours. Others argue it may not have been a child at all, but an adult of small stature, perhaps with a condition that gave them an unusual appearance. What unsettles many is the fact that no one knows why the Vatican accepted the mummy into its collection in the first place. It is not a saint's relic, nor a piece of confirmed biblical history. Its very style and construction suggest it belongs to a tradition outside the Christian world, which raises the question of why it has been kept so carefully preserved for more than a century. Those who have been allowed to view it in person often remark on the mask's gaze. Though its features are fixed, the eyes seem to follow the viewer, the faint smile hinting at secrets that will never be spoken. Whether the masked mummy is simply an archaeological curiosity or something far more unusual, it remains sealed in its glass case, a silent figure from a forgotten past, staring out from the shadows beneath the heart of the Vatican. In a section of the Vatican's archives, where shelves stretch high into the shadows, there are drawers filled with scrolls and documents bound in faded ribbon. Among them, according to archivists who speak only in careful terms, lie several papal bulls, formal decrees from the Pope that were written, signed, and sealed, yet never delivered to the world. They remain locked away, their contents known to only a handful of people, and their existence quietly avoided in official histories. A papal bull is not just a letter, it is a binding order carrying the full authority of the papacy. Throughout history, such documents have reshaped kingdoms, launched crusades, and defined doctrine for millions of faithful. For a papal bull to be written and sealed, only to vanish before reaching its intended audience, is rare. For multiple examples of this to exist, untouched for centuries, suggests that something in their contents was considered too dangerous or too disruptive to be revealed. One theory is that these bulls contained radical reforms, instructions that would have changed the church in ways that certain factions were unwilling to accept. Whispers speak of bulls that called for unprecedented transparency in church finances, or that sought to limit the political influence of the clergy. Some even suggest that one such bull addressed topics the church has traditionally avoided, like the full release of certain ancient texts, or the acknowledgement of controversial historical events. The earliest of these hidden bulls is said to date back to the late 15th century, a time when political alliances between the papacy and European rulers were fragile and constantly shifting. A decree that threatened to upset the balance of power could easily have been intercepted and buried. Later examples are rumoured to come from the 19th and early 20th centuries, eras of social and industrial upheaval, when calls for reform within the church sometimes clashed with the desire to preserve tradition. Those who have handled the documents under strict supervision describe them as immaculate, parchment still supple, ink still dark, seals intact. This suggests they were never even prepared for distribution, but rather stopped the moment they were completed. In some cases, it may have been the Pope himself who changed his mind. In others, powerful advisors or factions within the Vatican may have intervened, locking the bulls away to prevent their enactment. The Vatican's public stance is that all papal bulls of historical importance are accounted for, but the gaps in the timeline are hard to ignore. Archivists know of periods when a bull was announced as being in preparation, only for no such decree to appear. What happened in those moments remains a matter of speculation. If the contents of these sealed bulls were ever made public, they could reveal an alternate history of the Church, one in which bold reforms were attempted but strangled before they could breathe. Until that day comes, they will remain in the shadows, sealed orders from the highest authority on earth, written for a world that never got the chance to see them. In one of the Vatican's oldest manuscript rooms, where the air smells faintly of parchment and candle wax, there is said to be a bound folio of drawings that does not quite fit the accepted timeline of history. Its pages are filled with precise, detailed diagrams of the solar system, planets orbiting the sun, their paths marked in graceful ellipses. What makes these drawings remarkable is that they appear to have been created centuries before. Nicolaus Copernicus famously proposed the heliocentric model in the 16th century. The folio has no title page, no author's name, and no date written anywhere inside. The drawings are done in dark brown ink that has faded slightly with age, accompanied by small, neat notes in a script unfamiliar to most scholars. Each diagram shows the Sun at the centre, surrounded by the known planets, including Earth, which is clearly depicted as one of many worlds in motion. The precision is extraordinary, with relative sizes and distances that, while not perfect, are far more accurate than anything thought possible before the Renaissance. If genuine, this would mean that someone, perhaps an anonymous scholar, perhaps an entire forgotten school of thought, had a grasp of heliocentrism long before it was considered acceptable to say so. In the centuries before Copernicus, the official view, supported by both the Church and the most influential philosophers, was that Earth sat at the centre of the universe. To suggest otherwise was not just scientifically daring, it was dangerous. One theory is that the folio came from ancient Greek sources, preserved and copied by medieval scribes who kept it hidden. Another suggests it was influenced by knowledge from the Islamic Golden Age, when astronomers made advances that would not reach Europe for hundreds of years. Some even believe it could have roots in knowledge from much older civilizations, long before recorded history, passed down in fragments and reinterpreted by later minds. The Vatican has never officially acknowledged the existence of the manuscript, but a few scholars who claim to have seen it speak of its unsettling implications. If these diagrams were made in, say, the 12th century or earlier, then much of what we think we know about the history of astronomy would have to be rewritten. It would also raise the question of how such knowledge could be lost, only to be rediscovered centuries later. The folio remains locked away, inaccessible to the public. Perhaps it is simply a historical curiosity, an isolated example of someone guessing at the truth before the evidence existed to prove it. Or perhaps it is a piece of a much larger puzzle, one that hints at a hidden chain of knowledge stretching back further than we imagine. Either way, its pages hold a view of the universe that feels strikingly modern, yet was drawn in a world that was not ready to hear it. It is a silent testament to the fact that sometimes the future has already been imagined. It is just waiting for the right moment to step into the light. In the deepest levels of the Vatican's archive, beyond the shelves of illuminated manuscripts and ancient theological treatises, there is a room said to be reserved for the most sensitive records of the Inquisition. Here, thick leather-bound volumes are stacked in neat, ominous rows, each bearing only a date and a cryptic reference number. These are the sealed Inquisition records, documents so restricted that even most archivists have never been allowed to open them. According to whispers, some of these volumes contain accounts of the deaths of high-profile figures, royalty, scholars, and church officials that the official histories still describe as natural causes. The Inquisition was known for its secrecy, but its clerks were meticulous record keepers. Every interrogation, every confiscated document, every sentence carried out was logged. What makes these particular records so unsettling is that they appear to reveal a shadow version of history, one in which some of the most influential people of their time did not die quietly in their beds, but under circumstances engineered to protect the church's interests. One persistent rumour involves a celebrated astronomer from the early 17th century who openly supported ideas that challenged church doctrine. Publicly, he was reported to have succumbed to illness. Yet in one of the sealed ledgers, there is said to be a detailed account of his final days, describing a rapid decline that followed a private summons to Rome. The implication is clear. His death was not the result of disease, but of deliberate intervention. Another case often whispered about concerns a member of a powerful royal family in late medieval Europe, whose unexpected death shifted the balance of political alliances in favour of the papacy. Officially, it was recorded as a tragic accident, yet a hidden report allegedly describes a covert operation by agents loyal to the Inquisition, ensuring that a more compliant heir would inherit the throne. If these stories are true, then the sealed records do not just document isolated incidents. They outline a systematic effort to quietly remove individuals whose influence posed a threat to the Church's authority. These were not the public trials and executions that history remembers, but discreet operations carried out in silence, their evidence buried in rooms few will ever enter. The Vatican's public stance is that such records, if they exist, are kept sealed to protect reputations and prevent the spread of unfounded accusations. But to those who believe in their existence, that explanation feels incomplete. After all, history has already recorded the darker moments of the Inquisition. What could be so explosive that it must remain hidden centuries later? Perhaps the answer lies in the fact that these records would change how we view some of the most important turning points in European history. A death that appeared to be the will of God might instead be revealed as the will of men, operating in the shadows under the banner of faith. And if those truths ever came to light, they would not only rewrite the past, they might also shatter the image of moral authority the Vatican has so carefully preserved. Hidden deep within the Vatican's secret archives, there are said to be bundles of letters exchanged between high-ranking church officials and Nazi officers during the Second World War. These letters, written in a mix of Italian, German, and Latin, reveal a side of the Vatican's role during one of history's darkest chapters that few have ever seen. The correspondence is said to show a complex web of communication, sometimes cooperative, sometimes cautious, between the Holy See and the German military leadership. During the years from 1939 to 1945, Europe was engulfed in conflict, and the Vatican found itself in a precarious position. Officially, the Church maintained neutrality, seeking to protect its spiritual mission and the safety of Catholics across the continent. Yet, behind the scenes, there were exchanges of messages, diplomatic negotiations, and delicate efforts to influence events. These letters provide a window into those hidden conversations. Some of the letters reportedly discuss the protection of religious sites and the safety of clergy, as the Nazis occupied vast territories. Others hint at attempts by Vatican officials to secure the release of prisoners or to negotiate humanitarian aid. But there are also letters that suggest a more troubling relationship, a willingness to look the other way at certain actions in exchange for political favours or assurances. One particularly controversial letter, dated to 1943, is said to come from a Vatican secretary to a high-ranking German officer, expressing concern over the escalating violence, but also cautioning against actions that could jeopardize the Church's standing. Another letter, from a German officer, reportedly asks for guidance on dealing with religious dissenters in occupied territories, hinting at the complex overlap of ideology, power, and faith during the war. The existence of these letters has long been a subject of debate among historians. Some argue they are evidence of the Vatican's pragmatic efforts to navigate an impossible situation, trying to protect as many lives as possible while avoiding direct conflict with the Nazi regime. Others see them as proof of a morally ambiguous stance that allowed atrocities to continue unchecked. The Vatican has never officially released these correspondences, citing confidentiality and the sensitive nature of diplomatic communications. Scholars who have been granted limited access describe the documents as chilling in their frankness, revealing a church wrestling with its conscience and its role in global politics. Reading the letters, one senses the tension of a time when faith, fear, and survival collided. The Vatican was trying to maintain its influence, its mission, and its safety in a world turned upside down. But the shadows cast by these letters raise uncomfortable questions about complicity, silence, and the price of neutrality in the face of evil. For now, the letters remain locked away, their contents known only to a few. They serve as a reminder that history is never as simple as it seems, and that even the most sacred institutions are not immune to the complexities and compromises of human nature. Hidden in a remote section of the Vatican archives, far from the usual religious texts and ancient manuscripts, there are said to be files that few have ever seen, documents describing an unusual event that took place over Rome in 1954. These files recount the sighting of a strange aerial phenomenon witnessed by thousands of people, including Vatican officials, police officers, and ordinary citizens. On a clear evening in late July, reports flooded in describing a glowing object moving silently through the Roman sky. It was unlike any aircraft known at the time, shifting colours rapidly and performing manoeuvres that baffled onlookers. People watched in awe and confusion as the object hovered, darted, and then vanished without a trace. The phenomenon lasted for several minutes, leaving a lasting impression on those who saw it. The Vatican, known for its careful control of information, is said to have taken these reports seriously. According to the files, an internal investigation was launched to gather eyewitness accounts and analyze the event. Several detailed testimonies were collected from clergy members, Swiss guards, and members of the local police. The descriptions were consistent and described the object as luminous and otherworldly. Among the documents are handwritten notes, sketches of the object's shape, and reports from experts consulted by the Vatican. These experts struggled to provide any conventional explanation, noting that the object's movements defied the aerodynamics of known aircraft. There were no engines, no sound, and no signs of propulsion. This raised troubling questions that the Vatican apparently preferred to keep out of the public eye. The files also reveal correspondence between Vatican officials and government agencies discussing how to handle the influx of public interest and the potential for panic. There was concern that releasing too much information might spark fear or undermine the Church's spiritual authority. Instead, the official response was muted, and the incident was quickly relegated to obscurity. For decades, these UFO files remained classified, known only to a few high-ranking members of the Vatican. The secrecy fueled speculation among UFO enthusiasts and conspiracy theorists, who claimed the Church had long been aware of extraterrestrial phenomena, but chose silence over disclosure. Whether the object was truly from another world, or something far more mysterious, the Vatican's UFO files from 1954 offer a rare glimpse into how an ancient institution confronted the unknown in the modern age. They remind us that even in a city built on faith and tradition, there are mysteries that challenge what we believe to be possible. Today, the files remain sealed, but their existence suggests that the skies above Rome once held a secret far stranger than the ordinary. And perhaps, beneath the marble and gold of the Vatican, those secrets still linger, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. Deep within the Vatican's guarded archives, there are said to be handwritten notes from the Fatima apparitions, pages never included in the official release of the so-called Third Secret of Fatima. These notes, according to insiders, are far more disturbing and cryptic than what the public has been allowed to see. While the official Third Secret revealed in the year 2000 spoke of visions of martyrdom and suffering, these unpublished pages reportedly delve into darker warnings and hidden prophecies that the Church deemed too unsettling to share. The story begins in 1913, when 3 shepherd children in the village of Fatima, Portugal, claimed to witness a series of visions of the Virgin Mary. Over the years, their accounts became world famous, drawing millions of pilgrims and intense scrutiny. The secrets they were said to receive were kept under strict lock and key, with the Third Secret remaining hidden until the Vatican chose to reveal it almost 90 years later. However, some scholars and insiders claim that what was released was only part of the truth. The unpublished notes allegedly describe apocalyptic events far beyond what the public was told. They reportedly contain visions of a widespread collapse of faith, natural disasters that reshape the earth, and sinister forces working to undermine not just the Church, but all of humanity. The language is said to be filled with symbolic imagery, cryptic references to future wars, and warnings about spiritual deception. Why would the Vatican withhold such material? One reason may be fear of panic or despair among the faithful. Another could be the political sensitivity of the prophecies, as they might implicate powerful institutions or hint at conflicts that remain unresolved. The Church's role as a guardian of hope and order means it carefully weighs what it reveals to the public. The unpublished notes reportedly include direct pleas from the Virgin Mary, urging prayer, repentance, and vigilance against evil, but they also hint at trials so severe that they would test the endurance of even the most faithful. They are said to be written in a tone that is urgent and somber, lacking the reassuring comfort often emphasized in public messages. Few have ever seen these pages, and those who claim access speak of a profound emotional impact. The visions seem less like stories and more like warnings, messages meant to prepare humanity for a future that remains uncertain. The notes are stored under heavy security, their very existence rarely acknowledged by Vatican officials. If ever published, these notes could change how the world understands the Fatima apparitions and the spiritual challenges that lie ahead. They suggest that beneath the hopeful surface of one of the Church's most famous miracles lies a darker, more complex message, one that the Vatican has chosen to protect, for now, from the eyes of the world. Hidden deep within the Vatican's vast archives are records that raise one of the most unsettling questions in Church history. Did a pope once exist who never actually lived? Scholars who have quietly examined these documents say there is evidence of a papal reign fabricated to fill a gap in the official timeline. A shadow pope whose name appears in lists but nowhere else. This mysterious figure supposedly ruled in the early 9th century, a period when Europe's historical records are notoriously thin and often contradictory. Official Vatican records list his papacy as lasting several years, complete with decrees and appointments. Yet when historians cross-reference contemporary sources from other regions, the name is nowhere to be found. There are no surviving letters, no mention in chronicles, and no physical artifacts bearing his insignia. The story begins with gaps in the papal succession during the turbulent times following the fall of the Carolingian Empire. Political instability and shifting powers made record-keeping difficult, and the Church's authority was often contested. Some scholars argue that this so-called pope was created by later chroniclers to maintain the illusion of an unbroken line of succession, which was crucial for the Church's claim to divine authority. Documents suggest that the fabrication was subtle, designed to blend seamlessly with known history. Names were altered slightly from earlier popes, dates adjusted, and actions attributed to this figure were copied from predecessors. It was a way to cover uncertainty with certainty, to avoid admitting gaps or irregularities in the Church's leadership. The Vatican has never publicly acknowledged this theory. Official histories maintain a continuous list of popes, each succeeding the last without interruption. But the silence around this particular figure is telling. Archivists report restricted access to files related to that period, fueling speculation that the Church prefers to keep this mystery buried. If true, the existence of a pope who never existed would challenge the reliability of Church records and raise questions about other possible fabrications. It also highlights the immense pressure the Church faced to present itself as an unbroken spiritual authority through centuries of upheaval. For now, the Shadow Pope remains a ghost in the historical record, a reminder that even the most powerful institutions sometimes rewrite their own past to protect their future. And in the quiet halls of the Vatican, the truth waits, hidden behind layers of secrecy and time. Deep within the majestic walls of St. Peter's Basilica, the heart of the Vatican, and one of the most visited religious sites on earth, there is said to be a locked room that no one has entered for over 4 centuries. The chamber, shrouded in mystery and carefully concealed from view, is whispered about among Vatican insiders as a place holding secrets too dangerous or sacred for public knowledge. The existence of this locked room is not officially confirmed by the Vatican, yet hints and rumours have circulated since the late 16th century. According to some accounts, it was sealed during the papacy of Pope Sixtus V in the late 1500s. The reasons for sealing it are unclear. Some say it contained documents and relics deemed too powerful or controversial. Others believe it was a vault for objects connected to secret rituals or forbidden knowledge. Over the centuries, the locked room has become the subject of countless legends. Some claim that it holds manuscripts that rewrite church history, revealing truths the hierarchy wished to hide. Others whisper of relics so holy or so cursed that even the highest-ranking clergy fear their exposure. The door itself is said to be reinforced with iron and ancient locks, guarded by security measures that have evolved but remained resolute through time. Attempts to open the room have allegedly been made, but all have failed. Some say the key was lost during the chaotic years of the Napoleonic invasions, while others believe it was deliberately destroyed to keep the contents sealed forever. Even popes are rumoured to have been denied access, their requests blocked by those sworn to protect the Vatican's deepest secrets. Why would such a chamber exist beneath a place of worship? The answer may lie in the Vatican's dual role as both a spiritual centre and a historical fortress. For centuries, it has been the guardian of relics, documents, and artifacts collected from across the Christian world. Some of these treasures are public, while others are hidden away, locked behind doors few can pass. The locked room symbolizes the tension between faith and power, the sacred and the secret. It reminds us that within the splendor of the Vatican lies a shadowy side, where knowledge is carefully curated and some truths are kept in silence. For visitors who walk through St. Peter's grand nave, surrounded by marble and gold, the locked room is an unseen presence. It is a reminder that beneath the beauty and light, there are mysteries waiting, perhaps forever, in darkness. And while the world gazes upon the basilica's grandeur, the locked room holds its breath, a silent guardian of secrets 400 years old. Hidden away in a quiet gallery of the Vatican museums, among priceless works of art, there is said to hang a painting unlike any other. Created in the 16th century by an unknown artist, this canvas depicts a serene figure. Some say it is a saint, others believe it to be a mysterious noblewoman. What sets this painting apart is the rumour that it changes, subtly shifting its expression when no one is watching. Visitors and guards alike have reported moments of unease while standing before the painting. One minute, the figure's face appears calm and gentle, her eyes soft and welcoming. The next, when attention is diverted even briefly, the same face seems to tighten, the eyes darken, and a faint smile fades into something unreadable. This eerie transformation is said to be so slight that it escapes capture by cameras or by those trying to study it closely. The story of the painting's strange behaviour dates back several centuries. Records show it was acquired by the Vatican in the late 1500s, though its origins remain a mystery. Some claim the artist was a recluse who dabbled in occult practices, imbuing the canvas with a secret power meant to watch over a hidden truth. Others suggest the painting was commissioned by a noble family with a dark history, and the shifting expressions reflect a curse placed upon the subject. Scientists and art historians have tried to explain the phenomenon. Some propose that the effect is a trick of light, or a clever use of pigments that interact with the changing environment of the gallery. Others suggest the variations are psychological, our brains seeking patterns and changes in familiar faces. Yet, no one has been able to fully reproduce or explain the subtle shifts consistently, and no photograph has ever captured the change. Those who have spent time studying the painting describe a growing sense of unease, as if the figure is silently communicating emotions, judgment, sorrow, or warning that evolve over time. Some guards refuse to be alone in the room after dusk, feeling as though the eyes follow them no matter where they stand. The Vatican has never officially commented on the painting's mysterious reputation. It remains on display, protected behind glass, catalogued simply as an artwork of unknown origin. But the whispers persist, passed quietly among staff and visitors who feel they have glimpsed something impossible in those shifting eyes. Whether the painting truly changes, or it is a product of imagination, it challenges what we expect from art and reality. It suggests that history and mystery can blend on a canvas, and that even centuries-old works may hold secrets that refuse to stay still. For now, the painting waits patiently in its gallery, its gaze fixed, its expression forever caught between serenity and something else, something alive. Deep within the Vatican's restricted archives lies a manuscript that has baffled scholars and theologians for over a century. Discovered unexpectedly in the year 1902 during a routine cataloguing of forgotten texts, this anonymous work is said to predict a series of global crises with a precision that chills anyone who reads it. Despite its alarming content, The manuscript has never been published or shared beyond a select circle of church officials. The origins of the manuscript remain a mystery. It bears no author's name or date, and the handwriting is unfamiliar, suggesting it might be the work of a single scribe or a carefully preserved copy of an even older text. The pages are yellowed with age, and the ink has faded in places, but the words remain clear and urgent. The text is written in Latin and contains a mixture of prophecy, allegory, and vivid descriptions of events that echo disasters known to the modern world. The manuscript speaks of upheavals that would shake nations, economies collapsing, pandemics spreading, and societies divided by fear and suspicion. It mentions natural disasters, unprecedented conflicts, and the rise of ideologies that pit people against each other. What is striking is how closely these warnings mirror events of the 20th and 21st centuries, despite the manuscript's unclear date of composition. For decades, church scholars debated the manuscript's authenticity and significance. Some suggested it was a clever forgery or a work of fiction, created to inspire repentance or caution. Others believed it was a genuine prophetic text, possibly written by a mystic or visionary whose identity was deliberately erased to protect them or the church. The decision to keep the manuscript hidden was reportedly made to avoid causing panic among the faithful. The Vatican has long been cautious about revealing prophecies that could be interpreted as doom predictions, preferring messages of hope and faith. The unread manuscript represents a warning too raw and unsettling for public consumption. Scholars who have had rare permission to study the text describe an eerie feeling while reading it, as if the words carry a weight beyond their meaning. The manuscript closes with a call to vigilance, faith, and humility, urging readers to prepare not just physically, but spiritually, for times of great trial. The fact that this work remains unread by most is itself part of the mystery. What truths does it contain that the Church fears? What crises does it warn of that have yet to come? And why was it preserved at all, if not to be shared someday? The unread End Times manuscript stands as a haunting reminder that history is not only what has passed, but also what might come. Hidden away in the silence of the Vatican archives, it waits for the day when its message may no longer be just a warning, but a call to action. Behind heavy doors, in a little-known section of the Vatican, there is said to be a collection unlike any other, a series of death masks made from lifelike casts of every pope's face. These masks, created soon after the pope's passing, capture the exact features of these spiritual leaders, preserving their likeness for eternity. What makes this collection eerie are the masks that show signs of violence, injuries that hint at darker stories than those officially recorded. The tradition of making death masks dates back centuries, and for the papacy, it became a way to honour the deceased and keep a physical memory of the man behind the office. Each mask is made by carefully applying plaster to the Pope's face after death, capturing every detail, the wrinkles, the scars, the expression frozen in eternal stillness. The collection reportedly includes masks from popes who died naturally as well as those whose deaths were sudden or mysterious. Some of the masks display clear signs of trauma, bruising, swelling, and in rare cases, wounds that suggest more than natural causes. One mask, believed to be from a pope in the early 15th century, shows a deep cut across the cheek and a broken nose. The official records from that time describe the Pope's death as peaceful, but the mask tells a different story. Another mask is said to belong to a pope who died in the late 16th century under suspicious circumstances. The cast reveals an unnatural distortion of the face, possibly caused by poisoning or injury. Yet official documents remain silent on the details, describing the death as sudden illness. These masks are kept under strict security and are rarely shown to anyone outside a small group of trusted Vatican officials and historians. They serve as a chilling reminder that even within the highest ranks of the Church, power struggles and dangers were very real. The faces frozen in plaster carry stories of intrigue, conflict, and sometimes violence that history books often leave out. The masks also reveal the humanity of these men, whose faces tell of lives lived under immense pressure and responsibility. The deep lines of worry, the tightness of the jaw, the sadness in closed eyes. Each mask is a silent testament to a life's end that was more than just a passing moment. For those who have seen the collection, the experience is haunting. It is a gallery of silent witnesses, a place where history and mortality meet face to face. The papal death masks stand as a powerful reminder that behind the grandeur of the Vatican and the Church's spiritual authority, there lies a history filled with mystery, power, and sometimes violence that has left its mark, quite literally, on those who ruled. Deep within the shadowed corridors of the Vatican lies a cupboard known only to a select few. This is the Black Cabinet, a locked and heavily guarded space rumoured to hold artefacts confiscated from secret societies over the centuries. These objects are said to be steeped in mystery and darkness, items the Church deemed too dangerous or forbidden for the light of day. The Black Cabinet's existence is whispered about in hushed tones among Vatican insiders, though the Church officially denies any special collection by that name. Still, stories persist that this cupboard contains talismans, ritual tools, and objects associated with occult practices, things taken from groups like the Freemasons, Rosicrucians, and other secret brotherhoods that once operated in the shadows of Europe. Among the artifacts believed to be inside are carved stones inscribed with strange symbols, ancient books bound in leather and locked with iron clasps, and relics said to carry curses or supernatural powers. Some items are described as having been used in rituals to summon spirits or harness forbidden knowledge, practices considered heresy by the Church. These objects were reportedly gathered during centuries of investigations and crackdowns. When the Inquisition was at its height, agents would seize items from homes, lodges, and hidden chambers. Instead of destroying everything outright, certain pieces were preserved and locked away, perhaps to study or to keep them from causing harm. The Black Cabinet's contents are said to be catalogued but never displayed, locked behind layers of keys and guarded by the Vatican's most trusted custodians. The fear is not just that these objects could inspire curiosity, but that they could tempt or corrupt if seen by the wrong eyes. While little concrete information is available, the idea of the Black Cabinet feeds into the broader mystery of the Vatican's relationship with secret societies. For centuries, the Church viewed these groups as threats to its spiritual and political authority. The confiscated items symbolize a silent war fought not with armies, but with symbols, knowledge, and the control of hidden power. The cupboard serves as a physical reminder that beneath the grandeur of the Vatican, there is a history of conflict with forces that challenge established beliefs. The Black Cabinet, though unseen by the public, holds the echoes of that struggle. Whether the Black Cabinet is real or legend, it represents the idea that knowledge and power often come wrapped in secrecy. And within the Vatican's walls, some secrets remain locked away, waiting in silence behind that dark cupboard door. Hidden within the depths of the Vatican, away from public view and locked behind doors few may enter, there is said to be a most peculiar and unsettling relic, a human skeleton adorned with heavy gold chains. This skeleton is not displayed for tourists or even the wider clergy, but is reportedly shown only to a select group of cardinals during private ceremonies. Its existence is shrouded in mystery, and the Church has never offered any official explanation. The origins of the skeleton remain unknown. Some speculate it belonged to a noble or powerful figure from centuries past, whose remains were preserved and bound in gold as a symbol of wealth, status, or perhaps penance. Others whisper that it may have belonged to someone condemned for secret sins, bound in chains as a form of eternal punishment or warning. The reasons for such a grim display are lost to time, hidden within the Vatican's deepest secrets. The heavy gold chains encasing the bones are unlike any ordinary jewellery. They are thick and elaborate, with intricate engravings and symbols that suggest ritual significance rather than mere decoration. The chains appear to lock the skeleton in place, as if to hold it captive even after death. Some who have glimpsed the skeleton say the sight is both beautiful and chilling, a haunting reminder of mortality and power intertwined. Few have had the privilege or the burden of seeing the skeleton firsthand. Reports from cardinals who have attended the private viewings describe a heavy silence in the room, a sense of reverence mixed with unease. The display is said to provoke deep reflection on themes of life, death, and the weight of earthly sins. Yet no one speaks openly about the true purpose of the chained remains. Historians and Vatican experts have tried to piece together clues from ancient records, but the skeleton never appears in official inventories or historical accounts. This absence has fueled speculation that it is deliberately kept off the books to preserve its secret nature. Some theories connect the skeleton to medieval practices, where criminals or heretics were punished by chaining or binding their bodies to prevent the spread of evil even after death. Others suggest it may be connected to a powerful family who wish to display their enduring legacy in a dramatic, if macabre, fashion. Whatever its story, the skeleton in gold chains stands as a silent enigma in the vast collection of the Vatican. It embodies the intersection of faith, power, and mystery, reminding us that even in the world's most sacred places, there are secrets bound by more than just time. In the quiet halls beneath the Vatican, the skeleton waits, golden chains gleaming softly in the dim light, a relic of a past that refuses to be forgotten, and a symbol of the mysteries that still lie locked away in the heart of the Church. Beneath the marble floors and golden domes of the Vatican lies a world unseen by millions who visit each year. The treasures and secrets whispered about the 20 chilling artifacts we have explored are likely only the surface. For centuries, the Vatican has been a fortress of faith, power, and mystery. Its vaults and hidden chambers may hold countless other objects so disturbing, so powerful, that they have never even been mentioned outside the shadowed halls of the church. Imagine a place where every door locked is not just a physical barrier, but a wall between the known and the unknowable. A place where secrets are layered, catalogued, and sealed away to protect not only the church's authority, but perhaps the very fabric of what humanity believes about its past and future. What we have uncovered here are fragments, echoes, of a much larger story that may never fully emerge. For centuries, the Vatican has guarded relics and manuscripts that could rewrite history or shake the foundations of faith. Some secrets have been deliberately hidden to prevent fear, chaos, or loss of control. Others may be withheld because they challenge the narratives that have defined Western civilization for thousands of years. The artifacts we have discussed, from ancient manuscripts that question core beliefs to objects linked to dark rituals, paint a picture of a church grappling with knowledge and power beyond what most of us imagine. Yet, these 20 are just the beginning. What else is kept in sealed vaults, away from the eyes of even the most devoted scholars? What truths lie buried beneath layers of stone and silence? The very idea that there could be items too disturbing to reveal forces us to question how much of history we truly know. History is often written by those who hold power, and the Vatican has been a central figure in shaping that story. When knowledge is controlled so tightly, what is left out becomes as important as what is included. If these 20 objects provoke awe, fear, and wonder, then the unknown secrets beneath the Vatican must carry weight far beyond our imagination. They remind us that faith and mystery often walk hand in hand, and that the pursuit of truth is sometimes a journey into shadows. We may never see the full picture. Some doors may remain locked forever, but the questions remain, waiting patiently for those brave enough to ask, what else lies beneath? What stories, artifacts, and truths are hidden in the depths of the Vatican, waiting for the light? As we close this chapter, remember that history is never truly finished. It is a living tapestry, woven with threads of discovery and silence, truth and secrecy. And in the heart of the Vatican, that tapestry is still being written, one hidden secret at a time.